It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
So let's go from one running back who was killing it to a guy who 2 years ago was also a superstar, but injuries have kind of knocked him down, and that's James Conner. It seems like we just keep talking about running backs. I get in the Scott Fishbowl, but James Conner's on my team also. Now, last year, kind of ravaged by injuries. You'll see that didn't even eclipse 500 yards, only 4 touchdowns, but he did average 15 points a game in a PPR. James Conner, again, like most of these guys we've talked about, last year of his deal. They might run the wheels off him. So you're getting him right now at RB20. He's in the final year of his deal, like we said. In 2018, 2 years ago, in 13 games, nearly 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns on the ground, caught 55 balls for almost 500 yards. That's the guy you're hoping you get at pick 46 in the 4th round, according to his ADP. If you get that in the 4th round, you're going to the playoffs, or if you don't totally screw up the rest of your draft. He's a guy I like. Everything about Pittsburgh, in my opinion, is pointing up. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Dwain, on their offensive line. But you get Ben back. You've got these great wide receivers out there. The defense is lights out, so they should be winning a lot of games. And, it's set up for Conner. Just stay healthy.
Yeah. This is a guy that missed week 9, 10, 12 through 14, week 17. He had shoulder injury. The shoulder is what kept him out early in the season. He's a very physical running back. He likes to run with a physical style. He's got a low center of gravity. He likes to try to get lower than the next guy, and he doesn't quite always get low enough. He takes a lot of hits on the shoulder, and it's been an issue for him.
He's growing himself up now to look like The Rock on every steroid imaginable.
Yeah, he averaged 63% of the team attempts in weeks, in the games 1 through 8. He had 5 rushing attempts inside the 5 over those games, so he took 83%. That 5 is not a great number, but remember, we just talked about Le'Veon Bell, right? He had a team that had 8 in the whole season. So Pittsburgh, even with Mason Rudolph and a guy named Duck, had 5 in the first 8 weeks. And it's a much better offensive line than really any of the situations that we've talked about so far. Atlanta's got some potential there. Seattle doesn't seem to be much of an issue. They seem to have success running the ball no matter how good their offensive linemen or bad they are. But this is actually an offensive line, that can be really good. He averaged 16% of targets, Drake, in the 4 games that Jalen Samuel, missed, in 4 games with Jalen Samuel. But he lost about 40%. Sorry, I'm going to jump down. I'm not going with my slides here. Actually, before I go, notice, here's what I like, Drake. If this offense can be better, you get Ben Roethlisberger back. Look at these games that they won. Look at these points for Conner. 24, 31, 27. Okay. Now, Jalen Samuels did miss week 6 and week 8. So it's worth noting 2 of his biggest performances of the year did come with Jalen Samuel out of the lineup. So if we go down to his routes his snaps are all over, and it's more because of injury. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. And same thing here, injuries and a team that sucks, that was getting blown out because you lose Ben Roethlisberger right out of the gate after week 1. So there's not really a lot we can take from this that's actionable. Really, the percentages are going to be what matters more. And we've already talked about that. 63% in the games where he was healthy. This is what's more of an issue, right? So if we look in these games, his routes getting up over an RB1. Previously, in the year before, Conner was in 2018. Conner was above that line quite often in the games where he was healthy. Last year, he was down below the line a lot, and so Jalen Samuels actually was taking about 40% of the routes per drop back from what Conner was used to getting the year before. So he averaged 14 points per game in the first 5 games of the season with Jalen Samuel. And then he popped for that 31 and 24 points in 6 and 8 without Samuel. So PPR full season with Jalen Samuel projects out to 232 games. Now that's only based on 6 games that they played together last year. And that's with a super crappy quarterback. So again, that's why you start to get, excited. His tackles avoided per attempt dropped from 17% to 12%, but he was playing hurt a lot of last season. His breakaway attempts, though, so at least a 10-yard rush, on a per carry basis, 5%, which is really strong. He's still above the league average. He was 7.4% when healthy in 2018. And again, so all of this without Roethlisberger. So to me, when I think about, Connor, I get kind of excited because what he's able to do, even in a bad offense in these weeks where the Steelers were able to just stay competitive. So you notice the big bowl, right? Roethlisberger returns. You get Ben back. And yeah, Ben's probably good to miss 2 games. So you're going to have to deal with that. But in the games where you have Ben, you have to know that this is a team that went 8-8 with those other 2 quarterbacks. They have a really good defense as well. James Conner is going to get an opportunity. Yeah, the negatives are Conner misses games. He does. I mean, it's a fact. He's going to miss games. He's missed 4, 3, and 6 games in his first 3 seasons. But what I like is they're not the kind of things, Drake, like these pulls and strains. It's more like these bruised. It's like these the shoulder injury, right? It's not like a torn ACL or anything like that. It's things that almost to some extent feels like unlucky, right? It's harder to predict some of that kind of stuff, but he does try to play through it, and that's the positive thing, about the guy. I mean, he tries not to let it keep him off the field. But I think this is priced. I think this is all priced in. Samuel's usage and his injury history is priced in at RB20. If you can get James Conner in round 4 or round 5, I like him even better than Chris Carson at the price, because I'm getting him almost a full round to a full round and a half less based on what we're seeing with ADP. Now, in some draft formats like FFPC, they go much closer together. But what I like is this, of all the offenses we've talked about, like Connor is the one where we talked about, the carries inside the 5 that Le'Veon Bell's, the teams he was on used to see, average 17 per season. If the Steelers get 15, rushing attempts inside the 5, this season, which is very, very possible, James Conner is going to get 60 to 70, 80% of those, and he's really good down there. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he could easily be a 10 touchdown guy. He's going to not have as much receiving work as folks were used to in 2018. That's probably gone with Jalen Samuel. They did draft Anthony McFarland Jr., so they could sprinkle another back in there, a little bit. And that's something that we'll have to watch in the preseason. But for me, if I'm trying to build a contrarian team, man, I love James Conner. If I can start off, like get my runner in the first round, come back and go ahead and grab a tight end and a receiver in the 3rd round, and then I get James Conner in the 4th as my RB2. I don't want him as my RB1, Drake. That's getting a little risky, I think, because of the injury history. But as my RB2 and a modified running back approach, and we'll talk more about the draft plan as we go, but I think it's a really viable strategy this year to take one of the 2 elite tight ends in round 2 of Kittle or Kelsey. It's going to give you a positional advantage, and just the way the rest of these players are falling down draft boards at these different positions, I think Connor makes a great contrarian play. He and Chris Carson both do, to open up flexibility to build some different types of rosters than what everyone is going to be trying to build this season. If you're going to draft one fantasy team this season, this may not be the strategy. But if you're going to be drafting 50, you're going to be drafting 25 like me, and you're going to be playing, in some higher stake stuff, trying to win, some of these bigger tournaments. This is going to definitely be a strategy for me.
And if you go over to Pro Football Focus, you can see Dwain rankings right there. And he's got James Conner coming in at RB14, just behind Aaron Jones and ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire of the Chiefs. So pretty cool stuff. Head over to PFF and subscribe, help Dwain out. And there's just so much good content, man. I was getting lost in there today before the show. Great stuff from Ian Hartitz and all the guys over there.
Oh, there's some, the PFF has upped their game around fantasy content. There have been some really good folks there in the past, but now the volume, the number of people, that are there, you've got, myself, you've got Ian, you've got Jesse Reeves, you got Nathan Janke, you got Kevin Cole, again, writing stuff around fantasy, which is great to see. I mean, a great mathematical mind, and then there's other guys that I haven't even mentioned. So, I mean, there's some really good content going up. Eric Eager has done a lot of work behind the scenes from a math standpoint around models and projections. And, these writers and these analysts have access to the best data in all of fantasy football to help do this analysis. There's data here that nobody else is getting except NFL teams. So that's pretty cool, man. It's a very select group of people to get to have this kind of access, and it's cool to be on that list. And I'm delighted to be part of that team.
You know what I think when I hear all those names, Dwain? Podcast guests.
We do need to. Yes.